The Culture Pop Podcast is brought to you by the law offices of Jacob Emrani.
Accident or injury, call Jacob Emrani. Call Jacob.
Hey, it's Mase. If you or a friend or loved one is injured in an accident, the first person you should call is my friend Jacob. When I did this, Jacob was great. He helped me by talking through the next steps, which really put my mind at ease. When you're injured in an accident, you got to have an expert. That's why you call Jacob, just like I did. Call Jacob, 844-24-JACOB. That's 844-24-JACOB, or visit calljacob.com.
Call Jacob.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Culture Pop Podcast. I'm Steve Mason, along with Sue Kalinsky. Sue Ballou, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm wearing black. I'm trying to look slim because my husband does not stop baking cakes.
Oh, really?
So he baked a cake last night.
Yeah.
Pecan streusel.
Oh, God.
Cake.
Sounds so good.
Oh, my God. And, I say to him, it's like a blessing and a curse with you, because if it's there, I'm just going to eat like the whole cake.
I'm the way. I'm the same way. I mean, if there's cake in the house, forget it.
I know. And I said to him, stop bringing fattening stuff into the house. And he said, I want to get you fat so you won't leave me.
Oh, well, I guess that's no.
Uh-uh.
Now, does he like the cake?
Of course he does.
Is he making it for himself more than for you?
Well, we actually have a guest who loves Tom's baking and his cooking.
Oh, okay.
So he made it specially for our friend David.
I'm wearing black as well. I weigh 20 pounds less than I did a year ago.
You look great.
Yeah, I feel good. No, I've been working really hard at it, and we've got our big all-star softball game coming up, and I wanted to make sure that I'm in peak physical condition. So I think I'm there.
What position do you play?
DH. I'm just going to DH. No glove for me. I'm just DH, and I'll come up every 9 hitters, and that's good for me.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So coming up, Nico Santos is going to join us. He's got a brand new movie called Happiness for Beginners, which is going to start streaming on Netflix. In the meantime, Sue, July the 21st. Are you ready for July the 21st?
I don't know, but I hope I am.
Do you know what it is?
I don't.
It's Barbenheimer. It's Barbenheimer. Now, do you know what that is?
I do not.
Okay. So on the 21st, 2 of the biggest movies of the summer are coming out. One is Barbie, featuring Margot Robbie as Barbie and Ryan Gosling as Ken. And then the other movie coming out is Oppenheimer.
Okay.
Directed by Christopher Nolan. So you've got Barbenheimer. Okay. Now,
is that did you just make that up, or is that what people are calling it?
I would love to say I made it up, but that is what Variety is calling it. They're calling it Barbenheimer. So it's a big day for the summer movie season. So which of those movies are you interested in? One, both, neither?
I'm interested in both, but Oppenheimer more.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I'm just going to call it Barbenheimer. Oppenheimer, I cannot wait for. I'm a huge Christopher Nolan fan. He says that it's so visceral that it's almost like a horror film, and people walk away really shaken from it. It's a story of Robert Oppenheimer, who developed the atomic bomb. Cillian Murphy plays Oppenheimer. It looks fantastic. I am going to see both movies on that weekend. I'm going to celebrate Barbenheimer the way it was meant to be celebrated. See both movies back to back.
Oh, I thought you were going to say that you were going to have a explosive cocktail and you'll be wearing pink.
Oh, either one. Actually, in Malibu, I don't know if you've seen this. They put up a Barbie's dream house as a publicity thing. It looks really cool. And as of right now, the tracking that is what tells you what the box office is going to be is Barbie is tracking at about $80 million for opening weekend, and Oppenheimer about $40 million for opening weekend. So that's a really big weekend in the summer movies. But Barbenheimer, please be ready. One other thing I wanted to mention is this was very nice. I was selected as one of the 75 most powerful and influential LGBTQ people in sports. I was number 76.
Oh, very cool.
Now, I thought I should have been a little higher, but that's just me.
Who was number one?
Number one was Billie Jean King. Who's part owner of the obviously tennis, but part owner of the Dodgers. Then Megan Rapinoe, Laura Ricketts, who's co-owner of the Chicago Cubs, Brittany Griner, who we all know, Eric Braverman, who's a friend of mine, who's senior vice president at the Dodgers. He is in charge of everything over there now. Sue Bird, the WNBA star, Cole Nassib, the first gay player to come out in the NFL, Amanda Nunez, which is a UFC fighter, George Cheeks, president and CEO of CBS Sports, and Sam Rappaport, who is senior director of the NFL. So I was very, very happy to make that list, number 76. It's next year. I've got my sights set on the top 20.
Okay. Do you have like PR happening right now?
Got a publicist working on it. Exactly right. We're going to get that done.
And how did you find this out? Where was this announced? Or where did you read it?
It was sent to me by a site called Outsports, which has made its whole, career about tracking people, LGBTQ people in sports. So it follows all those stories. So they're the ones that made the list. And thank you very much. I know Sid Ziegler over there is one of the editors or the founder of the Outsports. So it's very nice to be on that list.
It's nice to be on a list, huh?
Yeah, any list. Most lists. Yeah, exactly.
Well,
yeah. So thank you very much to them. So Barbenheimer and the list of the most powerful LGBTQ people in sports. All right, so here we go. Our guest today is an actor. He's a stand-up comic. His big break was in the NBC hit Superstore, but since then, he has co-starred in Crazy Rich Asians and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. His new movie is Happiness for Beginners. It will stream on Netflix starting July the 27th. Nico Santos is here. Nico, thanks so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
So we'll talk about Guardians of the Galaxy and Happiness for Beginners and all this stuff, but I want to talk to you about Superstore, which you were nominated for the Critics' Choice Award at one point. What I love about the show is that besides being really funny, it is such a racially diverse cast. I mean, it's like the United Nations when you watch this show. I'm guessing, by the way, I'm guessing that there's a fair amount of improv in the show. Is that true?
Yes. Yes. I mean, that's one of the things that I really love. I mean, to answer the first part of your question, it is, I mean, the show debuted 2015. And even back then, we've made so many strides as far as the way things are cast now and, representation and all of that. And, we were one of the very few shows in 2015 that had a very diverse cast, which is really kind of crazy to say. And it wasn't necessarily written that way. None of the characters in the pilot script had a specific ethnicity in mind, except for Mateo's character, which was originally written as a straight Latino character, and they just sort of changed it to a queer Filipino character after I auditioned. But which was phenomenal. It just allowed us to sort of tell all these sort of stories that pertain to all of our different backgrounds, which led to a richer, seasons of 6 seasons of shows. But yes, a lot of improv happened during filming. We always got the written take on what was on the page, but the creators and the writers really gave us a lot of freedom to sort of just play as the characters. And when you're working with such incredible comedians and improvisers and actors, it was just a really fun collaboration between everybody to just sort of open up and just really just to play within the set, which was I don't know, I really missed that feeling.
Yeah, it was really a pleasant surprise. We had Lauren Ash on a while back, and I had never seen the show. And I guess the way life is these days, I just don't watch a lot of network television, and it's crazy. I mean, I think a lot of people are like, well, network television, that's not as good as the streaming television. But it was so funny and so smart. And America Ferrara, I wanted to ask you about working with her. She was an executive producer on the show. How much did she executive produce?
I mean, she did a lot. America, what was great about working with her was that, she had been in a very successful show, before Superstore. We all know Ugly Betty. And just sort of watching somebody who's seasoned like that, who's been through all this before, and she knew what questions to ask, she's also, she also directed a few episodes of Superstore as well. But she was just for somebody so young, she was just such a wealth of knowledge. And, she was an incredible actress. I think that's my favorite part about working on the show was it was such an education for me, especially because my background was in stand-up comedy. And going into the show, actually, I would say I kind of had a chip on my shoulder. Well, maybe not a chip, but because I had a background in stand-up comedy, I was very much I have a good grasp on comedy and all that. But, working in this environment, improvising is a very different muscle than stand-up. And certainly, television acting, film acting is a very different type of acting than theater or live performance. So there was a lot of stuff that I had to sort of, learn as we go and learning on the job. And it was, it's through watching, my co-stars like America and Lauren and Mark McKinney and Colton, truly everybody that came through those doors and the people we worked with, it was really, really probably the best education I got as a performer. And I still, to this day, it's just sort of whenever I'm kind of stumped on, where to take a character or choices to make, I sort of will just sort of go through my Rolodex of what happened on set and really try to figure out, ways to tackle that through the lens of the people I worked with.
So I wanted to ask you,
go ahead,
just real quick, I wanted to ask you, because you talk about being a stand-up comedian, and I wanted to ask you about how much do you feel has come your way because you're a stand-up comedian? Because I did stand-up for many years ago. And, you, as a stand-up, you have the opportunity to go on at a nightclub and be seen, where actors, if you're not in something, no one's, you have to get an audition. No one's going to see you anywhere.
Right.
So, I mean, that's, I would think, the beauty of being a stand-up.
Yeah, I mean, with stand-up comedy, especially if you are in a city like Los Angeles and New York, where things are truly made, there is that opportunity to be seen by a lot of people. And certainly I got a lot of exposure here in Los Angeles. But the thing that sort of opened the doors for me was when I first moved to Los Angeles, I did a comedy showcase for CBS. They have these diversity initiatives. So they had the CBS Diversity Comedy Showcase. And that was where I really sort of got my foot into the door. It opened a lot of doors for me. It's where I got my agent, where a lot of casting directors saw me, how I got my first professional acting job ever. And my first movie was through that program. And, I think that gave a lot more people saw me from that than just by doing stand-up. But you are correct. The opportunity to be seen is a far greater doing stand-up, because you can just get up on stage and do shows and huge creators like Judd Apatow will famously go to these shows and they scope out sort of upcoming talent in obscure performance spaces, whereas truly as an actor you have to go through I gotta get picked first and then be seen under this wider sort of like on television or whatever before people started to take notice. So I also sort of like the fact with stand-up comedy, you have a lot more control of the content, that you're creating and the things that you want to say and the direction of where you want to go.
Yeah. So Crazy Rich Asians comes along, and I think this is a really significant movie. I mean, it opened the door for so many other Asian-led films. I mean, Minari and Parasite and Everything Everywhere All at Once. I think that in a lot of ways, Crazy Rich Asians sort of, beat down that door. Would you say I know it's not perfect, but is it more open today for Asian actors in Hollywood?
It's definitely more open. I mean, you could feel the shift happen, I mean, and it wasn't just Crazy Rich Asians that happened. Crazy Rich Asians came out the same year as Black Panther did as well. So there was a real sort of like conversation happening about representation and sort of like the correct type of represent. Maybe not correct. Maybe that's not the right word, but like, a broader type of representation where we're not just being portrayed as, sort of like these side characters that aren't complex or they're sort of two-dimensional. With films like Black Panther and Crazy Rich Asians, you sort of saw just a wealth of portrayals of how our community could be. Ali Wong said something really amazing. I was just reading when she was being interviewed about beef that, when everybody in a show is Asian, or if they're if they're all Latino, if they're all African American, what have you, you really get to explore the characters as their own type of people. You don't go, oh, it's the Asian one.
Right.
All,
Right. That makes sense.
So you just sort of like see the characters for who they are, for those sort of universal characteristics that we all sort of, possess. And truly, I think that's what makes the storytelling more universal, even though it is sort of like shown in the lens of like these characters are all Asian, all Latino, all Black, whatever. It sort of levels the playing field, right? And sort of you just see the characters for what they're going through, what's going on in their head, what problems they're having to deal with, and it makes the story more universal, I feel.
So growing up in the Philippines, tell me if this is correct. You moved here when you were 16 years old. Is that accurate?
Yeah, about 15, 16 in the mid 90s. Yeah.
So growing up, what did you watch? I mean, I'm sure you probably watched some American TV, but what was Filipino television and movies? What were your influences growing up?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about living in the Philippines at that time, American culture was so dominant and revered. Like Hollywood, Hollywood is a brand, right? It is a thing. So sure. Obviously, like, I grew up watching a lot of American movies and a lot of American television. There was a block of programming, and one channel that showed sort of all the American shows. I remember growing up, like, Baywatch was such a thing, Murphy Brown, so I Beverly Hills 90210. But the Philippines also had a very prolific and robust entertainment industry as well. But it's very different. Certainly the comedy is a very different tone from American comedy. It's more sort of like slapstick, I would say, silly, very silly. I think that really informed my humor as well, because I think it was a lot of times it was more along the lines of sort of like Leslie Nielsen type of humor,
right.
Which again is right. A genre that I love. So when I discovered like movies like Naked Gun and Airplane, I was like, oh my god, like this is right on my alley. And in the Philippines entertainment, like the television shows, like it's a lot like I just have like my a running note. Sorry. A lot of the television shows, variety shows, were very, very, very popular. Sort of along the lines of Latino programming. Like Sábado Gigante, like
Sábado Gigante. I love that
sort of
show.
those huge, sort of like 3-hour long variety shows. Were also
like a telethon.
sort of the same format that they had in Philippine television. And the thing that I actually like remember the most too, that doesn't really happen with American shows, and they don't have the same expectation with American actors, is that in the Philippines, when they're promoting whatever movie they're in or whatever television show they're in, they're sort of expected to like literally sing and dance. So I remember like these actors would be invited to the variety shows to be like, oh, so and so's in a new movie, and here they are, they're going to sing a number, and they would not be necessarily a singer or a dancer, but that was like the expectation for the performance. Like, well, you have a movie out, go out there and sing "Achy Breaky Heart," and we'll put 12 backup dancers behind you and promote that movie. And I was like, oh, I guess that's what people do as an actor. And it wasn't until I became, moved to America and sort of understood what the entertainment industry was like here. And I was like, oh, I don't have to do a literal song and dance for, can you imagine like if whatever, Scarlett Johansson had to like do a Lipa song for every movie.
Right. Although sign me up. I would love to see it.
I mean, sure. Yeah.
So,
well, it's funny when I years ago I did Star Search and I won a few of them. And I remember when you came out at the end, all of the winners were standing in a row and they would play music, and they wanted everybody to just kind of like dance, and it was just so hokey and ridiculous. And it's like, I'm a comedian. I don't, I could dance, but but they basically, that was the direction. They wanted everybody to just kind of dance and look at each other.
I love Star Search. Whenever Ed McMahon would be like, 3 3/4 star. I was like, oh my God. They killed it. Only 3 3/4 star? Oh.
So you went to Singapore for Crazy Rich Asians. And I've never seen Singapore really. I didn't know what it looked like. It looks just amazing. And there's that hotel and it's got that crazy boat looking thing on top. I mean, what was it like shooting there? And by the way, this was your first time back to Asia, right? Since you actually left the Philippines when you were high school age.
I had gone back, when we first moved here, mid-90s, the very next year, my older brother and I were like, we miss home. So we went back 97 for Christmas. But I hadn't been back since then. So that we filmed in 2017. So yeah, it had been so long since I had been back and to Asia. And it was, and it was my first time we filmed in Malaysia and we filmed in Singapore, and it was my first time in those countries. And I didn't know what to expect. And man, obviously I had a picture of what Singapore would be like based on reading Kevin Kwan's novel. And, but seeing it in the flesh with my own eyes really was like, oh my gosh, this is like, it was like, this, certainly some of the buildings that you saw in some of the places that we visited were like, it's the future. It's insane. All these sort of like architectural marvels were just, just around you. And it was really, really incredible to just be in that setting. It was really just another world. And I also had forgotten how hot it was. It was so hot. I had to get used to it again.
Well, Aquafina, that was the first time she came on my radar. And oh my God, she's a piece of work. So talk to me about the scenes that you did with her, because you guys must have had an absolute blast.
It was really, really amazing. I mean, I had known, we had never met before. I knew of her. Certainly, her star was sort of rising at that point as well, because she had just done Ocean's 8 right before Crazy Rich Asians. And, you know, it was incredible being on that set because we all just got along. We knew that this project that we were doing, you know, was something special. We didn't know the impact that it was going to have, certainly after it had been released. But it was just like a fun environment to be in because everybody just got along, and it was an amazing group of people. But I remember when we were filming the sort of makeover montage scene, and the producers, you know, we didn't really know what gowns were going to be used, what dresses were going to be used for that scene. So we saw some of them. So they were like, if you could, you know, write some jokes about what you want to say. But a lot of that scene that we did for the montage scene was improvised because we didn't know what was going to come out. And it was just one of those perfect moments where you just had like a really good tennis partner, and you sort of like would throw something at Aquafina, and she would throw it right back at you. And, you know, and thank God a lot of the times I was able to throw it right back, because sometimes she would just hit something and I was like, I have nothing for that, because that was such a great joke. But, you know, as you all saw in the movie, it turned out so well, and it was such a fun day on set. We were just, I don't know. Sometimes I just look at the things that I've done. I was like, I can't believe I'm being paid to do all of this. I'm basically just being paid to be a silly idiot for a living, which is that's great.
It's a great gig. It's
gig. Amazing. Yeah.
Silly idiot. I like that. I actually I get paid for that as well. Believe it or not,
it's the best job.
It really is. So you played in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I would describe you as sort of bad guy number 2. You're like the runner-up bad guy. And James Gunn is the director. What's it like working on a big budget, Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana, all these? And were you a Marvel fan going into it?
I was a huge Marvel fan. Growing up in the Philippines, that was actually, other than, you know, movies and television, I collected comic books as a kid. You know, I was a huge, like, X-Men was my thing. X-Men
was my thing too.
Yeah. So I collected X-Men, X-Force, Excalibur, Power Packs for Marvel. I was a huge Marvel guy. Played like Dungeons and Dragons. So I think my mom still has some of my comic book collection, like stashed somewhere in the Philippines at my aunt's house or something. I gotta go through that because, you know, I have some like signed comics by Jim Lee and Will Spertasio and Art Adams, and, you know, these amazing comic book artists that I love. But yeah, I was huge Marvel fan. Being in a Marvel movie was one of those bucket list things that I've always wanted, but like I didn't even really know how that was going to be possible because I'm not really like superhero, like I don't look like Chris Pratt, or, like I don't got a superhero body. Like, like I always kind of knew that maybe my point of entry would be, like the funny whatever guy who was like on the controls, like whatever, so when this role came about, like I really didn't know what I was auditioning for, really. Like, these movies famously create fake sides for the audition process. It's very, very secretive. And I kind of like, I knew going into it that I was auditioning for Guardians, because after reading the sides, I was like, what is this for?
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm signing all these, like, very hush-hush things, and I think eventually they were like, it's for Guardians. And I was a huge fan of the first two movies as well. So I really was just like, well, I'm just going to have fun with this because, I loved the tone of the first two movies. So I'm just going to have fun with this. I kind of, judging from the side, I kind of maybe had an idea of what they were looking for. So yeah, and I was like, the thought of being cast in a Marvel movie was just like, never going to happen.
Yeah, right, right.
So I'm just like, just shoot your shot because like it's not going to happen. So I just, had fun with it. And man, lo and behold, it did happen. And it was such an amazing experience. This was my first time working on a movie of that scale and that genre. And it really is like, it was really like doing theater because everything was such like a production. And the sets were amazing and the costumes, everything was just like, you're working with the best of the best in the industry. So it was really, it was really incredible just to be around that.
Let me jump in. I want to ask you one thing. So I was also a comic book kid. I'm also a gay guy, and X-Men for me was, I don't know when I realized that it was a gay allegory, but at some point I was drawn to it as a kid. Like, here's this group of, superheroes who are different and special and go to a different school and all that kind of stuff. When did that strike you that it was sort of that part of the story was there?
Growing up, I didn't even make that correlation, even though I knew very young that I was queer. Like even before I had words to sort of label what I was, I knew I was different. And I think subconsciously, as a kid reading those comics, that's what I was drawn to, was like these group of people are different, and how they've sort of like have banded together as a family, and truly, that's why I love the Guardians franchise so much, especially in this third, in volume 3, is that it really is a queer allegory. Like the lengths, it's about chosen family and the lengths that you would go through to protect that family, at all costs. And, like these, people, they're fighting this benevolent force that wants them to conform to their vision of what the world should be. Right. But they just want to be who they truly are. And they have this chosen and found family who will protect them and will cherish them and will just let them be who they are. And, what better allegory for what the LGBTQIA plus community is going through than this film. And I think that's why, and to anybody who really truly feels like different. Yeah. And I think that's why these movies, Guardians in particular, I think speaks to a lot of people that way, because, I think it's the truly different people of this world who create the most beautiful and interesting things, and just, leave us in peace and let us make the world beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I agree.
Yes, that's a great sentiment. So just one more thing about Guardians. Your character is very, very evil. And unless you have some hidden dark side to you that we don't know about, how do you, because it really is, the part was really a departure for you. How do you access that as an actor? Where do you go to find this character?
Yeah, that's what I love about playing characters like Theo, and even like with Mateo on Superstore, like there was a lot of sort of like unlikable qualities about him. But the thing about playing Theo is that, he was really such an evil being. But, obviously in real life, I'm not the type of person, but when you are doing a project like this, and you're in an environment where you feel sort of safe to sort of explore those themes and those traits of the character, and in that setting where it's just like the spaceship and the lab and all that, it's just like James Gunn really sort of like opens the door for you, and he's just like, go and play, and you really can just like run around wild and do whatever, and he'll tell you if you're going too far. There were a couple of times on set where he's like, I mean, maybe not that much, these are like baby animals. I'm like, all right, I'm just figuring out how far to go here. But that was the wonderful thing about this project, is that it's not every day that you can play such a despicable person. And so it's kind of fun to sort of like just let loose and like, because knowing that like obviously you're that it's just within this sort of like like made up space that you're doing that, so it feels very freeing to sort of indulge that part of your psyche, because it's not you're not obviously hurting real animals, and you're not so it's it's sort of fun to explore those sort of like personality traits that aren't in you usually, because you're like, am I capable of something like this? Well, I'm not, but whoever this person is
sure
certainly at that place. So why not just explore that and sort of run free and see what it takes.
So I love a good romantic comedy. I'm a huge fan, going all the way back. Like I majored in pop culture, believe it or not. That was my major in school. So I went back. I did a whole comedy or a whole class on comedies of the 30s, the romantic comedies like It Happened One Night. And this movie, Happiness for Beginners, which we got a sneak preview of, feels like that. It's really an old-fashioned movie. Ellie Kemper's a delight. Luke Grimes is great. Your character is a big scene stealer. The movie's about a group of people who go on a long hike through Connecticut, camping along the way. I guess, do you have any experience camping? Are you a camping guy? Were you actually roughing it while you were shooting this movie?
Listen, I love nature. I love the outdoors, but I am not a fan of roughing it. I think nature should be admired and enjoyed next to a 5-star hotel, just as God intended. So
or on all on wallpaper in your room.
Exactly. Exactly. I love, like my fiance jokes with me all the time that the only time I love being around nature is, when it's within the Ritz-Carlton, which is true. I do. I love it. But I'm not a camper. In fact, like, years and years ago, my group of friends, I'm friends with all these like butch gays who love to do camping and outdoorsy stuff. My, fiance included. And they were like, we'll take you camping. We'll take you camping. I was like, all right, I have one stipulation, is that I need a flushing toilet. I am not shitting in the woods, wiping my butt. I am a grown ass man. I don't need to do that. So I'll camp. I'll walk as to whatever waterfall, lake you want me to go to, but I need to be able to shit and shower in peace. So they gladly obliged, and we had an amazing time. But filming Happiness was really great. The great part about filming that movie is that we filmed in all these amazing locales in Connecticut and the Appalachian Trail and all that. But because we couldn't obviously put the trailers where we were filming, the cast we just had sort of like this tent set up like near where we were filming, and our chairs. So we were sort of just forced to hang out in between shots with each other, instead of like, peace out, I'll see you in my trailer, whatever. I'll be in my trailer, and people just sort of go in their ways. We really were sort of like together for 14 hours a day at all times, and we got to know each other really well. And I've been really, really fortunate that the projects that I've worked on, everybody still keeps in touch. We're still on this text chain. I mean, for everything, with Crazy Rich Asians, Superstore, this movie as well. It was a real bonding experience between everybody. And it was, I don't know, again, it was one of those moments where I'm just kind of looking around like, we're getting paid to work, like, and this beautiful waterfall is literally right behind us, and we're making a movie. It's just like, I don't even know how I got here from like halfway across the world, where I was like 44 years ago. How I ended up here is just crazy to me.
So you met your fiance, I think, at the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall riots. Is that right?
Well, we met at the GLAAD Awards.
Oh, at the GLAAD Awards.
Yeah,
Okay.
the GLAAD Awards. It might have been, I don't know, it might have been the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall, but we met at the GLAAD Awards 5 years ago. My plus one knew his plus one. And at the after party, we sort of, all four of us sort of like met. We're like, oh, hey, there's so-and-so. And yeah, we met at the after party, and he was actually flirting with my plus one. And was possibly going to go home with my plus one. And I don't know what happened, but I made the first move, which I never do. I never approach guys. I'm very introverted and shy, believe it or not. I never, ever approach men on my own because I just don't do that. But for whatever reason, that night I was kind of just like, can I get you a drink? And it was putting all these smooth moves, apparently.
Nice.
And we ended up like talking and making out till 4 a.m. that night, and that was like 5 years ago, and now we're getting married.
That's great. That's
great.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in this story. You went to Southern Oregon University, right? By the way, I'm working totally from your Wikipedia page. So if something's wrong, please tell me. So,
it says here you were a firefighter.
So according to Wikipedia, there's a teacher at Southern Oregon University who discouraged you from acting and wanted you to switch over to costume design. Is that true?
Is that really on Wikipedia?
That is on Wikipedia. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Is that true?
Careful. It is true.
Is it wrong? It's not Wrongopedia?
It's not Wrongopedia. It is Rightopedia. It is Correctopedia. It is right. Listen, full disclosure, I was not the best student, but I also know that looking back at it now, that program was just not for me. But they were not very encouraging of my aspirations to be an actor, and was told that that this business is probably not for me, and that and because of my interest in design, my interest in costume design was born out of collecting comic books, because I would design the costumes for the superheroes and all that, but then would like design like, well, this is Stargirl, and she's also going to a brunch before she saves the world. So I would draw like what she would be wearing at her brunch before she changed into her costume. But they also recognized this talent that I had for design, and they really sort of just like pushed me as like, this is better suited for you. But, I will say that program was also in a small town in Oregon. I was literally maybe one of 3 people of color in that department. So, and the notion of colorblind casting was not a thing in that department. So there just really wasn't a place for me, and they weren't willing to make space for somebody like me. And so they were like, you should just be a costume designer because you don't have what it takes to be an actor.
Wow.
And that's, being a designer seems more suited for you. And, and I hate the fact that still, I still sort of carry that experience with me, and how much it informed what I believed about my talent and what I believed about myself for so many years. Because it wasn't until I got out of that environment where somebody, I started working as a dresser for a theater company, working with costumes and stuff, where an actor I was in charge of dressing was the one who was like, you're really funny. Like, you should be performing stand-up. And even though I was a fan of stand-up, it really didn't click in my head that was another avenue to performing, because I just thought that like, well, the only way to be an actor is to be like Laurence Olivier and to do Shakespeare and Chekhov, and you're not an actor if you don't do those things. And I think even back then, people really didn't give legitimacy to comedic acting. And it's really funny that now when I talk to dramatic actors, that they're like, man, you do stand-up or you do comedy, that's the one thing I can't do. where, I guess like grass is always greener because I look at what they do and I'm just like, oh God, if I had to do a scene where, like, my family's just been killed and I had to like, process that, whatever emotion. I'm like, I don't know, like I've certainly had to do dramatic scenes in Superstore before and stuff like that. But, again, that's like a muscle that I'm like, I don't know how to do what you're doing. But yeah, it's, they did discourage me. And I'm just glad that I finally was able to sort of like shake myself out of that thinking and discover my passion for performance through comedy, because it is as legitimate a way of performing as dramatic.
Of course.
It's just a different medium. I think musicians, I don't know, like nobody questions whether like a musician is like, oh, you play the piano, you play the guitar, whatever, like, oh, that's your instrument. But when you're like, I'm an actor, and I confidently label myself like, I do comedy. That's my bread and butter. That's what I get hired to do. There seems to be like this hierarchy of like, well, you're not like Meryl Streep, you're not doing dramatic acting or Shakespeare, so you're not an actor. I'm like, no, it's just a different medium. It's a different play a different instrument.
Well,
I truly believe that I think it's more difficult to do comedy than it is to do dramatic acting. I
think so too.
I think it's much more difficult. I don't think that every actor who is a wonderful dramatic actor can cross over, but the ones that do, like the Harrison Fords, who you would never expect to actually be funny in something. I mean, that's definitely a special gift, but
that's why I get so mad when I meet or see actors that I admire, who I know from their dramatic work, who are so funny on screen. I'm just like, that's not fair. Like, you're such a good dramatic actor. You're gorgeous. And now you're funny. Like, come on. But I absolutely agree. I think, people can, faking laughter as a response is a very hard thing to do. So especially I see this when I'm doing stand-up, like genuine laughter, the difference between genuine laughter or when an audience is just like, ha, 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 like sort of like
going along with it.
Yeah. Giving you that fake laughter. You can tell right away. And people will sit through bad theater, but they won't sit through bad comedy. So they'll get up and leave.
Yes.
They'll
Absolutely. Timing.
Yeah.
Timing is difficult. Yeah.
But I mean, like, people will sit through like, 4 hours of bad Shakespeare and then afterwards like, oh God, that was awful. But like a bad comedy show, people will just get up and leave or like throw drinks on stage or, throw tomatoes at you, whatever.
Yeah. What's the expression? Dying is easy. Comedy is hard.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, much to the chagrin of some professor at Southern Oregon University, it seems like everything is going pretty well, man. You're out there. You're doing great. This has been great to have you on. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is now streaming, I think, and Happiness for Beginners will start streaming on Netflix on July the 27th. Nico, thanks a lot for doing this, man. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. This is great.
There you have it, Nico Santos. And by the way, Happiness for Beginners, we didn't talk a lot about, but I absolutely loved it. And it really is kind of an old-fashioned meet cute and fall in love and all that stuff. It really works. And he is a scene stealer. But by the way, a scene stealer in everything he does.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's great. He's really, really fun to watch.
So I think I texted you. I want to be quiet about this because Juan is listening. So on Wednesday, we're getting a new dog.
Well, I saw that you had posted something, and I don't know why I'm whispering because Juan is not here.
Juan cannot hear you.
I know, but it just feels weird for me to talk different while you're talking to me like this.
It's a very
so I saw
shaky
pictures.
commitment. Yeah.
No, but So does he not want another dog?
He's going back and forth a little bit, and I have my heart set on Mike, and I think I finally talked him into it. So I'm pretty sure the Mike thing is going to happen. It's going to happen on Wednesday, but I'm nervous and I don't want to jinx it.
Okay. He's really cute. Is
He
Myrtle,
is cute.
right? Is that the dog's name? Myrtle?
Well, no, that was the lie of the day. His name is actually going to be Mike. It's a him.
Oh, it's a him. Okay.
It's a him. So we'll have
Okay.
Ron and Mike.
So funny. When we interviewed Stephen Wright,
Yeah.
he was saying he loved the fact that your dog's name was Ron.
Yeah, Ron is such a non-dog
Just a guy name. Yeah.
guy name. All right. Well, there you have it. If you are listening on Spotify or Apple, we appreciate you being out there, and hopefully you've subscribed to the show. We are on YouTube. If you want to see the show, if you're listening now and you want to see it, you can go to youtube.com and search Culture Pop Podcast, and we will pop right up. There's all kinds of really good stuff there if you've missed it. Cassidy Freeman was great, and who else? Jacqueline Bissett was fantastic.
Andrew McCarthy.
Yeah, I mean, we've had really good stuff lately. So definitely go check that out. We're recording this on Friday, June the 30th. So that means you won't see it until a while from now. But I'm going on vacation, so I'm really excited.
Why are you whispering that?
I don't know. I just, the whisper thing is just interesting to me. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. We appreciate you. Sue, great seeing you. And we will see everybody next time on the Culture Pop Podcast.